I didn't say that, it's a line, I didn't see here, you guys gave it to me, I don't see the
Okay,
payment after that.
this is not time to discuss that.
I'm not gonna argue with you. You did it, and you did it in front of the public, and you did it to Mr. Warren and myself earlier today. It's not very cool. She's correct, there was an approval for a police sergeant and a police officer in 2014, earlier in the year, last fiscal year. And it was decided, at least according to our records, it was decided not to spend that money because it was a 3-year commitment, number one, at $250,000 per year for 3 years for those 2 positions. And it was decided we were not going to spend that until we knew what the budget was going to say. And then that was turned around and we did fill the sergeant position. So there is still a police officer position approved, but it was never fully executed by the council unless, we'd have to go back to the minutes and see what was really said. But it was my understanding that it was to be held until the budget and we determined we had the money. Because we have run this, if you were to throw that $750,000 in there, we would be down to almost zero.
That goes to the fire department, fire building, when we approved the major H money to spend the public safety feasible study for the fire department building, not for the police. They are charging for the police department. I don't know what feasible study is done for the police department. But I understanding we did the feasible study for the fire building, not the fire department building, not the police.
That's correct, Mr. Kim. There hasn't been a study for the police department whatsoever. We haven't seen any reports whatsoever from the police department.
They,
That is correct.
Yeah,
Hold on, Mr. Chief Mercado, do you have something to say?
The only thing I'd like to say about the feasibility study is that the study was conducted for the public safety center. So public safety meaning police and fire buildings were studied together. So
Together.
The document of the 1995 was the study that included both buildings.
Okay.
So regardless if it came out of fire or police, it was paid by Measure H to study public safety. So regardless of what the title was, it was a study of the public safety facilities.
Okay,
Thank you for the clarifications. And the other one is, city council member decided that every time city staff, they make own decision to not to spend the money, or not to do it. And because Mr. Haji, you not supporting the council members, the staff, they do whatever they want. And we can't say anything. Whatever we decided, if the staff feels like it's not functioning, they're supposed to bring to us, but bring the agenda again to make our decision reversed. But this not happen. And they staff make own decision to do whatever they want. That's why I said earlier, we are just like a rubber stamper. We just do make a decision, but staff doing whatever they want to do.
Okay,
So
do you have a
Mayor,
question for staff? Mr.
Mayor,
Kim?
may I make a clarification on that?
Yes.
That's just so out of line, that's pitiful.
And I would concur with that. I mean, that is just completely false.
Let me put this whole thing in perspective. When this was being discussed, there were the presentation that was before the committee and also council subsequent to that was for a police sergeant and a police officer for 3 years, $250,000 to be applied each year. Okay, there were several issues with that. One was, well, what happens at the end of the 3 years? And the other major issue that we've just seen here that isn't mentioned yet is that at the same time we were getting the bonds approved. And the bonds were a particular problem to the council, and the council, as I recall, sent Marshall Lynn off in frustration because the council couldn't make up its mind whether it wanted to pass the bond issue or not. And here's what happened. When you did pass the bond issue, now you've even exacerbated the problem because this fiscal year that we're trying to get a budget for, we must pay $996,000 in debt service out of the Measure H. That's not coming out of the bond proceeds or somebody's credit card. That's coming out of the Measure H money that we receive, that the committee works hard to to allocate or approve, and that the council subsequently approves. Now, with that bond payment, the debt service payment, you're digging in very deep into the Measure H money. And that should be a concern to the council. And I think Mr. Warren and myself, during the budget presentation, have brought that out, and we'll discuss it again tonight if necessary. But it seems to me that there is some jeopardy there, and you have to pay attention to that. And we did not deliberately avoid it or alter the council's recommendations. The council was very, very careful and being very cautious. And it wasn't my move directly and my move independent of anybody's action. We all agreed that that should not be done lightly and that we should probably wait until fiscal year 2014-15 before a decision was actually made.
So the issuance of the bond caused over $900,000 in debt service to be paid,
$1 million.
$1 million over time, over the
No,
time?
1 year payment.
1 year payment, each year.
Each year, and so what that does, it affects the amount of Measure H money you have to spend on whatever it is, police officers or parks or whatever it is, because you've got to make that debt service payment. Now, we're not saying that that was a bad decision, because with those bonds, you're gonna do a fire station, you're gonna build a park, you're gonna do the swimming pool.
And later a police station.
You know, and maybe later police station, but the bottom line is when you make these decisions independently, they all have an impact. And so that's why it's important when you do the budget, you have to consider all the impacts. We have done a budget this evening, which we'll talk about, that takes into consideration all the impacts of all the decisions that have been made, and we've come together and we've got a balanced budget.
Okay, so it would be, at this time, not in the best interest of the community to hire and pay those salaries, because after 3 years, we may not have the money to pay.
Well, the way the budget is structured, we're hiring 1 new employee this year, and it's 1 police officer.
Okay, and that's what we can afford.
And that's what we can afford, and when we can look at, in the budget document, the commitments for the Measure H money that were in the bond covenants, as well as the proposals for the expenditure of the remaining Measure H money, which does include $996,000 in principal and interest payments.
Question, Mr. Kim, go ahead. Ask the question, please.
Why, well, again, I understand any raise some issues, whatever the council decided, voted it, and some might gonna come back to some issues like BJH, whatever. And you guys supposed to bring to the council again to reconsider, instead of that you guys make own decision, we just throwing the rock to the sea.
All right, you've already asked that question, Mr. Kim.
And that,
Is there another question? You've already asked that question.
That's what I'm saying. Why didn't bring
Okay.
it to us?
And that question was
to make
already
a
answered.
decision?
That question was already answered. Is there another
No.
question that you have?
The question is not being answered.
He answered it already. Could you answer it again, Mr.?
They cannot make own decision. We have to make
Okay,
a
that has
decision.
already been discussed. Is there another question that you have so we can move on, so we can move this meeting forward, Mr.
And
Kim?
also I told them, when we approve the bond, I've been warned you guys, we don't have the money to, if we approve the bond, we don't have money for anything. And you guys will approve it. Now we have jeopardizing ourselves, approve the position. Now staff said we cannot spend money because $1 million plus the $1 million we spending money for the allocated for the safety fund, and $1 million we have to make the bond payments. We cannot hire the officers.
Okay,
So
anybody
we have
else?
to
That's
act with
enough. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody else have any questions? So we are to receive this and acknowledge it.
So acknowledge.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item.
The city would like to settle the unsettling issue of the overtime that went over by 1.2 million in the police department. I think that it's time, this is the 5th time I've asked for it. We need a report, we need an analysis. Where, a plan of action, as Mr. Hodge indicates, where is this going? A lot of the questions that were out there from the public about that issue is that, where is the accountability? And if this were to occur once again where we don't have a control in that area, what are we going to do? And so I believe that it's only fair to ask for some type of an analysis and action plan to be able to not only monitor and control the overtime that occurred in the manner it did this past time, but also in all fairness, to be able to understand this department correctly and be able to have a proper tool to find solutions to this issue.
I understand Councilwoman Hurtado's concerns, but Chief, last year you gave us some type of report. Can you elaborate on that? Does that answer the concerns of Councilman Hurtado, or was a handbook?
Yes, we did provide you with a report. Besides, on top of it, the whole plan, as the city manager made reference to, the working plan, the roadmap that we utilize to run the department is part of the budget that you're to approve today. That's what you're budgeting. In addition to that, we are obeying the council's mandate to provide police services. It is your policy, it's your mandate that we provide the given services by the department. If you authorize, like Mr. Moreno made reference last week or 2 weeks ago, if you wish to make a policy and cut the services. I was talking to staff today, and the sheriff's office in the past, they cut services at midnight, they cut services at 3 o'clock. It's up to the council. That's a decision that's not up to me to make. You have to adopt a policy that says we cannot afford services for the community. We're gonna cut the services at this or that level. We're pretty much running on minimum staffing, and that's why the overtime comes in, because when we don't have people to serve the community, we bring somebody on overtime as per your direction. And that is the plan, that's the strategic plan. We provided one in accordance with JPI 8 last October, and I think we provided 2 reports. In addition to that, the city also paid the plan that the fire chief made reference to.
What is the minimum staffing? Is it 1 sergeant and 4 officers?
Yes, sir.
And we are adhering to that?
Yes, sir.
Have we looked at the possibility of entering in an MOU with the Border Patrol if perhaps one of our police officers can't make a call? I know that has been done before, and I recall one instance back in the 80s where there was a call to the police department, but the police could not make it, and the Border Patrol showed up to assist in that public safety issue. Do we have a memorandum of understanding?
That's been done throughout the years. They continue to respond to most of our calls for backup, but the primary responsibility lies on the police department in the city of Calexico.
Right, but still, I mean, that is something that we'd like to entertain to see how we can continue reducing this overtime, and hopefully that staying within the budget is one of the major items for our police and public safety.
Yes, sir. And actually, Border Patrol has an officer, an agent assigned to our department.
But you just gave some suggestions if we cut services, but I don't really like that. How is the dispatchers, because that's the life and blood of this city, that's extremely crucial. How do you feel? Are we okay staff?
We're making do, and I talked to the city manager, and we're gonna try to follow and adhere to the budget, but there's going to be occasion, like he said, it is a bleeding and breathing document. You know, down the road, we might have to make adjustments. But it is up to the council, and you direct us, and we'll cut the services. It's your decision.
Well, it's not about cutting the services, it's about reducing overtime, and I think that I mentioned at the last time, an overtime policy across the board with all departments, that we need approval by city manager to bring in people on overtime. And I think we need to, that would be one of our goals this year, because if not, it'll be very difficult for next year to look at a balanced budget if we continue with this type of spending.
I have met with the department heads and the chief, and we've talked about the overtime issue. We've talked about the service delivery issue, and we've made it very clear that we're going to continue to provide the same level of service, but at the same time, we are going to live within the budget that's given us. And I know the chief has made that commitment to me, and I'm going to be monitoring on a weekly basis. I'm going to ask every department head that if they have somebody who does overtime, I want that we're going to talk about each person that has gone over for the week and why they did it. And so that's going to be part of our accountability that the mayor has asked for. I think there are things we can do in the police department to make us more efficient. One of the things I suggested when I first got here was that currently when the officers have to run a license plate or something, they have to call the dispatcher. Well, I have to tell you, in 4 police departments that I've had in the past, the mobile data terminals that are in the cars were hooked up in such a manner that the officer did not have to call dispatch to run a license plate or a warrant. They just typed it in their computer, it went to NCIC, and it was back in 5 seconds. Now, there's something where technology can be used to reduce the load on the dispatchers. This technology is very, very cheap to install, and it's very, very easy to do. Like I said, I've done it in 4 police departments. But there's an example of how we can take a load, be more efficient by using technology, taking a load off the dispatchers, taking a load off the officers, and honestly, it's officer safety. I mean, if I was pulling up on a vehicle, I would sure like to run that license plate number without calling the dispatcher, because the dispatcher may be busy with something else. Why not run, that plate? Why not run that license? Why not run that picture through the computer and help protect the officers that are out there? So I guess what I'm saying is, I think there's still opportunities for us to be more efficient, provide higher levels of service, provide better officer safety, and I'm going to be working with the police department and the chief to do some of those things. And so, I mean, I'm just giving one idea. I have a couple of other ones that I think can help. Pete Mercado and I have talked about some things, and he's been very receptive. The water people have been receptive on things we can do to cut overtime and be more efficient, and I believe we can do it. And I'm committed to keep the overtime down. Every department head is committed to me they're going to keep the overtime down, and then we're going to follow up with weekly visits and reports to the city council.
Let me ask, when an officer is called into overtime, would it be in the best interest of the city to call an officer who is lower on the salary schedule than one who is higher on the salary schedule? Because I'm sure overtime would be time and a half or double time or whatever it is.
We really can't pick and choose, because sometimes we don't have that many officers to pick from, so we have to pick whoever's available. Sometimes we have to force or direct people to come in and beg them to take the overtime. Now, one thing that I discussed with the previous city managers is that if you follow the plan, if you follow the budget, if you meet our needs at the police department, instead of criticizing the police department, we can meet the overtime. The previous city manager says, can you keep it within the $450,000 overtime? Sure, but you have to give us the positions that you're allocating, that you're approving today. Over a year, we haven't been to full staffing. You're looking at a budget today that we have 4 vacancies. That's 4 salary savings you're doing. That's let's say $400,000. That's gonna cost us $600,000 in overtime. You're saving $400,000, but in overtime, time and a half, that's gonna be $600,000. So with the 450 plus the 6 is gonna be $1,050,000. But it's not because the department is wasting it. It's because you're not fulfilling your part of the contract, the budget. We're not following the road. We have a roadmap that we're not looking at. And as long as we keep those vacancies and continue to bank on the salary savings, it's going to take us overtime.
I'm happy to have these conversations offline with the chief privately, but let me just say this: the overtime is not a staffing problem; it's a management leadership problem. And I'm just going to be upfront. And, I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. I'm not trying to cast stones, but it's not a staffing problem.
Hi, Josie Felix again. I represent Measure H here. In the past, the City Council has borrowed from Measure H $1 million to balance out your general fund, $600,000 going over to PD and $4,000 going over to fire department budgets. I want to caution you that you won't be able to afford or be able to tap into Measure H funds, since we're going to be paying those bonds starting next fiscal year. Therefore, your departments, would used to tapping into our Measure H to offset their budget on overtime will not be able to do that. So just a word of caution.
Thank you.
I think that it's important to say that this is not about, it can't be a situation, it was so severe, the overtime was so severe in the eyes of many of this community, that it can't be a matter of just saying words. I do recall the document you're talking about. However, that document had many different issues that called my attention. For example, it talked about a commander position, and to me it was just a statement of the status of the PD. It wasn't necessarily a plan of action. So I don't understand why, if it's a normal process to ask for studies, we're studying this, we're studying that, why is it we haven't been able to see a study and understand what is happening here and what is it that the whole staffing circumstances, because I don't believe it's fair to sit here and just listen to words. I would like to see just a report. I don't see why that's so hard that we can't get a report. The other document, if you guys want to base that as the report that we were asking for, not a problem. Let's have a presentation on it then soon. Because when that was given to us, there was no explanation, there was no review about it, there was nothing. And to date, I'm still confused. I still get information from many different places. I'm pretty sure the public's confused too. So it is very simple. It is very simple. A plan of action, some type of a report to say this is the status where we're at now, and this is where we plan to go. There is one thing that I just noticed now, is that you, sir, as the interim city manager, you're indicating that you will ensure that your department heads are held accountable for when they go outside of their budget. But in this case, I have not heard this department head say that he will himself be accountable for that budget. So it's a matter of who has the accountability and where's the transparency. So in order to be able to respect our citizens who have seen that this is a big problem, let's just give them a report. Let us review once and for all. Either it be the last one we had, probably 6 months ago when it was issued, if that's going to be called the plan of action, or a new one. And I believe that's fair.
With all due respect, I'm tired of the police department being demonized. I think it's a very simple solution. If they're adequately staffed, and we give that report to show that you need to be adequately staffed, and then the overtime will come down, Chief, when you get the people that you need, just like the fire department. To me, it's a very simple solution. I don't understand why you as a police department are demonized. But anyway, I don't think it's major mismanagement. I think it's a matter of proper staffing. And so once again, we're divided, but that's my position, and that's it.
First of all, it's not fair. You give me 15 minutes, you give them the length of the 2 times of the Mr. Hurtado.
Okay, you want 3
You
minutes?
do the same thing.
You want 3 minutes?
No, I do not limit it.
No, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do
unlimited.
no, excuse me.
You gave it
Okay.
unlimited.
All right. Do you have a
You're not
question?
fair.
No.
That's why you didn't get dispatched.
Well, you were timing, but I was trying to keep a close tab on the time and the clock. But go ahead, ask your question, make your concern. Let's move on with this item. We've got to get it approved.
I'm not gonna show the length of time. I try to do the issues what
Be brief and be sincere.
So, what I'm saying is our budget, it itself, it is showing $1.2 million for the general, for the police overtime itself, it doesn't, all the general fund, from the Stone Garden, from the grant together.
Thank you very much.
Budget is not factual budget.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Your 3 minutes are up. Mr. Castro, you have 3 minutes to close.
Yes, I have a question on page 154 from the proposed budget. It says here, all fund summary, fund balance, revenues, and expenditures. And fund balance, June 30th, 2014. It says here, $6,922,000. On the next item, project access deficit, revenues, and over expenditures. There's no numbers, there is a 0 number. I would like to ask you again, what is the deficit from 2013 to 2014? There is no number on that space. How come it's 0?
You're talking about 154, the first line that says general fund, and there's a 0?
Yes.
The reason for that is you're starting the general fund with a fund balance of $6,922,000. $622,694, and because the budget is balanced, you will end the fiscal year with $6,922,694. So therefore, there's zero increase in the fund balance and zero in deficit. It's balanced.
Oh, okay, but there is no numbers, what was the expenditures and what was the revenues for 2013, 2014, again?
I think that's a projected, is that the middle column, Mr. Castro?
Yes.
That's projected for this coming year.
Right, it's this coming year, not
2013, 2014?
No,
Well,
14, 15.
No, I'm
This-
talking about 2013, 2014.
This particular chart shows the change in fund balance for the various accounting funds. What we mean by fund balance, that's, you start out the fiscal year with a certain amount of money in the bank, okay? And then you go through the fiscal year and you get revenues and you get expenditures, and then you have an ending balance. So what you see here is in the ending balance, after you have your revenues and expenditures, you have an ending balance on June 30th, 2015 of the same amount because the budget is balanced. And that's why you see those dashes on most of the other accounting fund line items, is because those accounts are balanced. That's why, you know. And that's what, I think that's what City Council wants, is balanced budget in where revenues equal expenditures. If I was a City Council member, and I used to be one, believe it or not, in my other life, I would be really worried if there was negatives over in the middle column, a lot of negatives.
I just want to add, Councilman Castro, the column on your left, the leftmost column is the June 30th, 2014 fund balance. Of course, we haven't had the audited financial statements yet, but the estimate is it's over $1 million, and that's already been reflected in this number.
Which one you talking about? Which column you talking about?
In the left-hand column, it says $6,922,694.
Okay.
That the deficit has already been taken out and is reflected in that number.
Page 190,
I'm sorry, what, 190?
190. On the column, it says here, administration, non-department, general fund. On the column 35, memberships and dues. On the year-end estimate, 2013, 2014 was $169, I believe. There is no zeros. In the proposed budget fiscal year for 2014, 2015, we're talking about $193,000.
133,000.
Page 190, he's referring to the last column, $193,000 on item line 35.
Yes.
And he's questioning the fact there's
Can you
$169.
explain that?
Jump.
I mean, it's a huge difference on that, so, again, why?
We did go over this.
Yeah, I think we addressed this last time, but go ahead.
Yeah, Councilman Castro, we really are trying to adopt the 14-15 budget. We show, in accordance with the Government Finance Officers Association and best practices, we try to show actual balances and prior year budget balances, but sometimes they aren't realistic when you're trying to restructure things and put in cash balances. So the year-end estimate for 13-14 is really irrelevant. We're trying to pass the 14-15 budget. So if you see an anomaly like that $169, it's probably there because that's the only thing that was recorded in the books at the time we put the number in there.
We received this budget on the around 15 days ago. You give us the budget on Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. And after 2 days, I believe, was Sunday when we received the budget, or at least I received the budget on Sunday. And the next day, I believe, was a memorable day, or was a holiday. Okay, was Monday. And on Tuesday, we had a meeting. So we couldn't review the whole agenda in the budget. So my concern here is, since you've been here, we're receiving the agenda late. I mean, for me, that's something that we need to receive the agenda at least 4 days before, 3 days before, but not on Sunday. I mean, that's for me. I mean, you give us something, numbers. We are city councils.
Okay,
We
Mr.
are
Castro,
here.
please close. You've already gone 4 minutes.
We are
Please
here.
close.
We are here to make policy and to look for the benefit and to look for projects and everything related to the citizen. We are not accounting persons. Will you please next time give us this with
Thank you. Point is well taken.
3 or 4 days? Don't interrupt me,
No,
Mayor.
you've already gone past your 4 minutes. I'm not gonna, please close, ask your question, and get your point. Let's move on.
But
We have-
don't interrupt me.
I can interrupt you.
You're doing that to Mr. Kim. Don't do it to me.
I am the chair. I am the
No matter
chair.
if you're the chair.
I am the chair. You've gone over your,
Interrupt me. Let me finish.
well, I have to remind you about the time.
What time?
The time that you've been speaking. It's already 4 minutes. So please ask your question. I think we've already got your point, Mr.
Don't try to
Castro.
be smart.
I'm not trying to be smart. I'm trying to run this
Yes,
meeting,
yes,
Mr.
try to be
Castro.
smart.
No, Mr. Castro, please. Is there a second for the call for the question?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No. Opposed? Are you opposed, Mr. Castro?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 3-2. Motion still carries. Now, we vote on the adoption of the 14-15 budget. Is there a motion on the floor?
Mr. Mayor, the only area of contention, of course, is the interpretation of why the overtime in the police department. Other than that, I think it's an exceptional budget. I think it's well organized. It's something that I've asked for as goals and plans and a roadmap. So I think it's a job well done. So I would like to adopt this budget, sir.
There's a motion on the floor to adopt the budget for 14-15, the proposed annual budget. Is there a second?
I'd like to propose the, seconding the, adoption of this budget, taking into consideration what, City Manager, Warren has indicated that there will be a freeze on any adjustments in the positions as well, and we will be seeing an additional version of what we're seeing here today that's going to take into consideration all that information.
Yeah, what we are going to do is not change any job titles at this time,
Yeah.
because we're still in the process of restructuring, so that's the way I
But it's
understand.
a living document.
It's a living document. There will continue to be reorganizations and restructuring as we continue to go forward and be more efficient, more transparent,
Yeah.
but we're not gonna change any job titles. The thing we will do is, we will, clean up the document, but and give you a copy of the final budget. So words like proposed will be taken off, you know, there's some grammatical kinds of things, but the budget will be substantially what you have here. We'll give everybody a copy of the document. It is living and breathing. We will go forward. We'll probably make changes as time goes on.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor.
Mayor, I just want to
Oh, I'm
clarify.
sorry,
it's
go
for-
ahead.
It's for approving the resolution, which
Right.
approves the budget. Thank you.
Okay, that's the resolution we're approving tonight.
Okay,
Yes.
so with that said, and that included in my motion, I motion for its approval.
Well, it's already been moved by Mr. Hodge, I believe.
Seconded by
Seconded by Mr. Hurtado. Please vote.
I said that.
Wait a minute. Well, let me announce, we've got a motion that carries 3-2 with Kim and Castro in opposition.